So this summer, I saw an article, this article here, in a publication called The Conversation, about too many people think satirical news is real. You may have seen it also. Christianity Today picked it up and republished that article. And the gist of it is that Snopes, the fact-checking website, did a fact check on an article from the Babylon Bee, a satirical news website. Some people thought that was funny, some people thought that was not so funny because it's satire, it's obvious, everyone should get this. But actually, not everyone did get the satire. They missed that this was a fake publication, and these researchers, they did a study, and they found that a number of people, minority, but a good number of people actually believed claims that they had seen online that were from satirical news sources. So maybe you can reliably recognize satire. Maybe you're not that person on Facebook who is always sharing the latest dubious, exaggerated posts from a hyper-partisan political Facebook page. Although I bet you just thought of someone you know who does that very thing. Maybe you'll find yourself serving in a church with people who are being misled by hyper-partisan, racist, or other poor information sources. Maybe you've been asked by an acquaintance if what those blogs say about Covenant Seminary is true. So today I want to present you a set of strategies that you can use and share with others to more critically engage with what you see shared on social media. And that is called SIFT. It's an acronym. And this comes from Mike Caulfield at Washington State University, Vancouver, and has been developed into an online course called Check Please Starter Course. It has 4 pieces to it. And we'll go through each of those in turn, but they're not really steps, they're more of a toolbox, although there is somewhat of a hierarchy. So let's go with each of those in turn. We'll start with stop. Now to do that, we're going to talk first about going viral. Now, educational YouTuber CGP Grey has a great and entertaining video. This video will make you angry. And he very well talks about this idea of how ideas go viral. And we use a model here of thoughts or ideas, or these things are like mental germs. A thought or an idea or information can behave like a mental germ. An idea that no one is thinking about ceases to exist, whereas an idea that is shared with others can take on a life of its own in the broader community, even if some will forget about it. Now, not all the ideas are equal in this area. An idea that is boring and uninteresting can be easily forgotten and probably isn't going to spread very far. On the other hand, ideas that leverage our emotions can grab our attention, bypass our critical thinking faculties, and spread like wildfire online. In fact, some researchers have done some research in this area where they studied news articles that were widely shared on social media and looked at the different aspects of those articles and what seemed to be the cause of, or what drove their virality. Emotion was a huge component. As you can see, sadness actually was negatively correlated. Sadness doesn't get you very far, but something like anger can really push something out into the broader world. So when you feel that emotional response to something you see online, the first step is to stop and re-engage and evaluate what's going on. The stop tool also reminds us that as we're using some of these other tools, we'll find ourselves going down an unproductive rabbit trail. And so we'll want to stop, back up, and try a different approach and use a different tool. So the next tool is investigate the source. What you want to do here is check your first impression when you see something that you're unfamiliar with. Is this site what I thought it was? And does that make it more or less trustworthy? Who is behind this, and why are they a reliable source? To do that, you actually want to get off the site. You don't necessarily want to look at, I mean, you can look at the about page on the site, kind of see what they say about it, but you don't always want to go by what they say about themselves. You want to see what other people are saying about them to get up to speed on what's going on. So let's take a look at some examples here. And what we're going to do is the Wikipedia trick. Now, you've probably been told by many a librarian or academic that you should not use Wikipedia. So am I telling you now to use Wikipedia? Yes, I am. Surprise, surprise. Now, I'm not saying you should cite this in your paper. You're not going to use Wikipedia as a source in your academic paper. Generally, you won't use any encyclopedia unless it's very scholarly and specialized. And you shouldn't necessarily trust Wikipedia 100% of the time because, again, anyone can edit it and say whatever they want there, although they do have some systems built in to try and check that kind of influence. But it can often provide useful background information, especially when you're interacting with an unfamiliar source. And if something seems off in Wikipedia, check the footnotes. Every claim in Wikipedia should be footnoted to some other outside source that you can then follow up on and see if that is a reliable source for that claim. So let's take a look at some examples here. So here's the first one, this website before its news. Now, if you look at this even very briefly, you see a lot of red flags on this site. There's a lot of stuff that just seems off about it, and a lot of really weird claims and ads and sort of information on here that's a telltale giveaway that this is not a great site. But if we're not sure, this is kind of an easy case. This is what we can do. Go up to the address bar. And what you want to do is strip away everything off besides the domain name. So I just want to get rid of everything before and after the domain name. I'm just going to hit space Wikipedia. In most web browsers, that will trigger a Google search. And by adding that keyword to Wikipedia, that will bring the Wikipedia result hopefully to the top or near the top in your results. Now, so I've done my search for beforeitsnews.com Wikipedia, and this is not encouraging that the top result is the article list of fake news websites. So I can go in there, and now I want to find before it's news. So I'm going to hit Command or Control F to bring up the Find in this page feature and type before it's news. You can try it with or without spaces, and there it is. And so there it is on the list of fake news websites. It gives some examples of news stories that were published on there that are entirely fake, and then over on the side here, references to sources where that's been reported. So I was quickly able to, through this trick, find that this is just fake, fake, fake. Now, Before It's News is kind of like it's just an open forum for people to post things they consider news. It's just open for anyone to post there. And so it has become a haven for conspiracy theories and all kinds of bad information. So if you do a little more research into it, that's what you would find. Let's look at another case. So here's a news story that someone was talking to me about on this site, The Post Millennial. And so this is about some authors being plagued by fraudulent books on Amazon. So someone just took blog posts and put them together, published them as a book on Amazon. There's legal wrangling. Now this is a legitimate news story. I mean, there's links to tweets and other information. You can go to the Amazon page and see this book. But I was curious about this website. Who is the Post Millennial? So let's do that same Wikipedia trick. So I'm just going to strip off everything but the domain name, and add the word Wikipedia. So it doesn't look like they have their own Wikipedia page about them. The first result is their About Us page. Here's something, this mediabiasfactcheck.com. Now, I don't know anything really about this website, but let me take a look to see what they have to say about it. Sometimes using a variety of sources can help me get an idea of what different people are saying and kind of help me find a consensus viewpoint on this. And I could even do the Wikipedia trick on media bias fact check to see if there's any information about this source. But so this is telling me that, at least in this site's estimation, this is a right-biased news source. So they're not trying to be neutral. Gives me a little write-up about their history. It's created in 2007. It's very new. What is their funding? And some analysis of the bias. So basically, they're trying to be a mostly legit news source. They're not creating fake stories, but they're just very selective in what they report and are always favoring a conservative narrative of the news. And it's a Canadian website, so particularly it's Canadian and Canadian politics, but they do cover US politics as well, but always from that conservative viewpoint. So you do have to be a little bit careful there, but you know, they're not outright creating false news there. So that's how you can use the Wikipedia trick to investigate a source. The next tool is to find better coverage. Sometimes you don't care about the particular source that it's coming from. You just want to know, is this claim true? What can I learn more about this? So what you want to do there is find, coverage that you can trust more in-depth coverage, or just even more varied coverage so you get the whole spectrum of opinion on this topic. So let's take a look at what we can do there. So I've got another 2 stories. So here is an article on BuzzFeed News. Now, maybe you hear the word BuzzFeed and you think of those listicles that you see popping up on, Facebook, like, 7 whatevers that will surprise you. Number 5 will blow your mind. That's kind of the typical content I associate with BuzzFeed. So, is this, so I don't know about BuzzFeed News, is that, maybe that's, can I really, trust this? Is this, legit? Is it satire? What's going on? So Obama said publicly shaming people on Twitter is not activism. So I just want to know, I want to know more about it. Okay, is this really legit? So I'm going to just do a Google search. And let's see, call out culture was kind of a phrase that kind of popped up in there if I read the article. So just going to Google search for that. And sure, I get lots of information here. I get videos of this. I get news stories. If I want to limit it, I can do the Google News search to limit it to just news sources. And there again, we have lots of publications, mainstream publications, reporting on this event. And I can click through on any of those that I like and read more about it. Now, BuzzFeed News is actually a legitimate news source. It's a spin-off from BuzzFeed. It actually has serious reporters behind it. If you do the Wikipedia trick on that, you can read more about some of the major breaks they've gotten, although there is some acknowledgement that they do tend to lean left, and there is some questions about their journalistic practice in terms of some of their political commitments. But otherwise, they are a legitimate news source. Let's look at one other one. This one just came across in my news feed. This is from the website Talking Points Memo, which is a left-leaning news site. Trump-loving Florida officials cry fake news while rejecting New York Times subscription for libraries. Well, that's a very loaded headline. So let's see if we can find some more neutral take on this. So Florida Library, New York Times. That should bring it up. We can hit the news tab, and we can find out, yes, this actually did happen. The library took a request to the county commissioners to get funding for a digital New York Times subscription. They already had a print, but they wanted to offer a digital subscription, and citing their support of President Trump and the fake news published in the New York Times, they turned down the request. And you can read more about it in any of these stories here. So that is actually a true story. So using that, just Googling some keywords related to the central claim that we are interested in, we were able to find more varied, more in-depth, and more trusted coverage for some topics. Now, the last tool is to trace to original context, whether that be claims, quotes, or media. I have another couple examples there. And so what you want to do here is cut through the layers of bias and simplification that you can often find out there and find the reporting or context for that original information or piece of media. And one of the powerful tools we have here is reverse image search for media. So I've got here something I saw on my Facebook feed a little while ago. Now I've blurred out the image here, just sensitivity for anyone who's viewing this. But this is a picture from 1993. This photo won the Pulitzer Prize in 1994. The photographer took this in Sudan during a famine, and what you see there's an emaciated toddler who was going to a UN aid station, probably with a number of other people. But just in the frame, you just see that child collapsed on the ground while a vulture hangs in the background. So you can, as you can see, if you can read the description there, the poster says that the photographer waited 20 minutes for the vulture to spread its wings, but eventually gave up after 20 minutes and just took the photo as is. And then the photographer got up and walked away. And then she claims that when asked if he helped the starving child, he answered, "That was not my assignment." And then the poster goes on to make a connection with abortion and what are we going to do to help the unborn. Now then she says the rest of the story in the first comment, there is not a whole lot of information there. It does fill out the story a little bit. But I was more curious to get, what is the original context for this photo? I want to know more about this photo. So what I was able to do is you can just right click on the image, and usually you'll get an option to copy the image or image address or download the image. I chose to copy the image address. Then I went to Google and went to Google image search. So right up there, there's the option for images. Click on that and get Google image search. And I'm going to click on the little camera icon there to do the search by image. And there I can either paste my URL or I can upload the image and do my search. Now what I got there is, in this case, I got information about that particular image. Since it won a Pulitzer Prize, it's been covered in news media, has its own Wikipedia page. It's been covered on other websites who have done a write-up on this and the controversy around it. Sometimes you may get a fact check, particularly if it's a misleading or doctored image that's been shared widely. A fact check organization may cover it, or Google can also find perhaps the original. You can try and narrow down to where was this image originally posted and find its original context that way. So there's, depending on the image, you'll get different options there, but you have some tools there to drill down to find more about this image. So what's the story here? So the photographer, I found out, was a South African photojournalist named Kevin Carter. After taking the photo Indeed, he did not help the child, but he did chase the vulture away, and said that then the child got up and continued onward towards the UN aid station. He was a little bit of a troubled person. He had covered a lot of war and in Africa, and famines and other very bad situations. He'd seen a lot of death and tragedy in his time as a photojournalist. A few months after winning the Pulitzer Prize for this photo the following year, he took his own life due to, he said in his note that he's haunted by the tragedies he had witnessed and the mounting debt he was under. So that left me I found that a valuable exercise to get that context, because I felt much more conflicted about the photo after learning all that. Maybe not conflicted, but it gave me a much more nuanced understanding of the photo and its context and the photographer than the simple story that was told. Was that story, illegitimate or wrong? No, but it did give me I had much more complex feelings about the situation and what was going on there, and its use of the photo in that new context. Now, if we look also at claims and reports, we want to find the original for the context. So here's an image that I had shown earlier from the Occupy Democrats Facebook page. A story here: Christian leaders laid hands on and prayed for Donald Trump ahead of impeachment vote. So I see that, and what is the implication that they're making? What is the story they're trying to tell here? Well, it sounds like they're trying to say that Christian leaders came to the White House to pray about the upcoming impeachment vote or trial. But let's follow the original to see what the story is. So we click through to that, and that's a link to this story on rawstory.com. And so here's the article. And so it starts off with just restatement of kind of what was in the article title there, that evangelical Christian supporters laid hands on and prayed for the president just days before the House of Representatives voted to pass impeachment inquiry procedures. Then it gets into a list of people who are there, throwing in some mean-spirited, maybe descriptors: hate group head Tony Perkins, failed presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann. I'm surprised James Dobson and Gary Bauer didn't get any descriptors added on to them. And then we get down to the Christian Post reports that Robert Jeffress had told CBN News about the main purpose of the gathering, and that was to inform religious leaders of the continuing remarkable accomplishments of this administration, especially in areas that are important to evangelicals. So it sounds like maybe this wasn't really connected with impeachment so much. It was more just a routine meeting with faith leaders. So let's click through to that Christian Post news story and see if we can find out more. So again, not a whole lot more information here. You read that press weren't invited to this meeting, so we just have what these faith leaders tweeted about afterwards and what the White House Deputy Press Secretary released in a statement about it. There's not a lot of information there about what happened in the meeting beyond what we already read. We just have a rehash of who's there. You're talking about many accomplishments and their benefit for communities of faith. It's an informal meeting. And then we just get into more quotes from tweets and everything like that. And then down at the bottom, at the end of the meeting, several asked if they could pray for the president, and he graciously welcomed the offer, as he always does. So, do we know what happened in that meeting? Not a whole lot. We don't have a good grasp on what happened. Did they pray for the president? Yes. Do we know what those prayers were? No. Did they have anything to do with impeachment? Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility that someone prayed for that. But going back to that original post, I would say, okay, maybe that's kind of a little misleading, or at least says something with more certainty than we can really know based on the actual original reporting. One more example. So here's a tweet. Provision quietly tucked into GOP tax bill could lead to over 1,000 people dying every year. Wow, I did not know tax policy could inflict mortality like that. So that's interesting. So let's find more about this. So first we have the shared article there from Think Progress. And here we get to kind of what's going on here. There's a tax break for alcohol producers of a certain size. And basically the idea is that you lower the cost of alcohol consumption goes up, alcohol-related deaths also go up. So kind of an unintended consequences sort of thing. But here, it cites a Brookings Institution report that provides this estimate. So let's click through to that and see what the Brookings Institution has to say. And so here we get a, economics studies senior fellow is providing this analysis. There's a link to a footnote below where he describes his methodology. Now, I'm not an expert on these sorts of things, so that may help me, maybe not. But maybe then I want to use some of my other tools. I want to stop, go back and say, okay, well now I'm at this Brookings site. Let's see more about them, find out more about them. And I can read that, okay, this is a generally well-respected think tank. It has been cited by both political parties roughly equally. It has been variously described as conservative, liberal, or moderate. So I guess depending on who's doing the analysis. So it's maybe a reasonable source. Maybe I want to follow up and find more information about that claim using something like Google Scholar or a library database to find out more about alcohol tax and mortality and find some other analysis of that topic. So I can use these tools together to help me narrow in on a better understanding of what is originally a rather provocative claim. So that's SIFT. Stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context. So these are some handy tools that you can use to improve your fact-checking abilities and read social media with better understanding and be a more responsible sharer of content on social media.